we would all be going to hell, bro. But sometimes the Lord picks people who wouldn't pick themselves. You're a liar, okay? If God is allowing it to look like we're about to lose, it's for a reason. Allow Christ to shape you into his plans, not the other way around. If you take nothing else away from this video, just take away the fact that, oh my goodness, Elias recorded another episode. Yes, he did. I am not Corey Kenshin. I'm not about to be the Christian Corey Kenshin. I've gotten them allegations before. Nah, we're not doing that. Life has been good though, you know what I'm saying, the past, I think, month or so since I've uploaded. I guess maybe a month and a few days, because I gotta edit this joint too. But life has been cool, man. Still on the job search, still, rooting to it. I'm still alive is the main thing that I'm worried about right now. Like, folks ask me how I am. I'm okay. You feel what I'm saying? It's not fun being unemployed. The whole full-time content creator thing was really cool. I learned a lot, and I have a more clear vision for my future as far as it goes with like video production and content creation, and advancing my my personal professional career, like outside of ministry stuff and outside of personal business stuff. But things are a lot more clear now, and I'm grateful for the time that I had as a full-time content creator. But that time, for now at least, is over. Man, during that time and other times during my whole life, one thing I learned is that God can be confusing. That sometimes it feels like I'm on God's path, but like, where are we going, big bro? You know what I'm saying? So that's today's topic. So we're going to talk about, because boy, do I have some things to say. But without further ado, my name's Elias. I make videos to help people get to know Jesus still. And today we're talking about God and how confusing he can be. Before we start, I just want to say that I actually feel like feeling confused by God is actually a good thing. And by confused, I don't mean like God's trying to trick you or like God's saying A and B at the same time. You know what I mean? I kind of feel like, what I mean by confusing is not fully clear or like not fully understandable. Like you don't have the entire roadmap or plan. And I think admitting that is one of the truest things that a Christian can do. And if you are confused by God, I feel like it's good to say that you're confused. I think it's good to confess that, because I think confusion gives you the opportunity to lean on God even more, to say that you're even less capable than you already are, to say that you don't understand everything, to say that you really do need God to, get a full mental picture of what's going on, or at least to be led. Because imagine if we knew everything and we always had a clear and perfect picture from God, we would never really need to form a relationship with him over time. We just kind of get the instructions one time and carry them out like a soldier or some kind. You know what I'm saying? We are soldiers in the army of the Lord. I understand that. But if we were only soldiers and not children, there would be no relationship. Before we begin, I want to encourage you to see confusion not as a reason to abandon the Lord, but as a push to trust and lean on him even more than you already have. Because even sometimes Jesus himself had the disciples confused. He was talking about dying, going to the cross. You won't understand this now, but sometime you will. Like there were many times that Jesus and the disciples kind of didn't see things on the same page. Like they would be doing the exact same thing. They'd be in the exact same place, and Jesus would say one thing, and they would kind of be like, what do you mean you're about to die? You're about to be crucified. What are you talking about, dog? You know what I mean? Like, you're the Messiah. You're not supposed to die. And the reason I'm pulling up these stories is because I want to continue to let you know that it's okay to feel confused by God. I know the word says he's not the author of confusion. That's not what I mean by confusion in this sense. The English language is too limited. There were times when Jesus would tell the disciples like he's going to die and they weren't with it, or he would be doing something like washing their feet at the Last Supper. And Peter would be like, Lord, you're not washing my feet. You're too good for that. You know what I mean? Like Christ would do some things the disciples didn't always fully understand, and it always was for their benefit. So why would we be any different? Why would we have any different experience with Jesus? Sometimes he's going to do things we don't fully get. Sometimes God's gonna put you in a direction that you don't fully understand why you're going there. Maybe it looks like a bad idea to you. Maybe it seems like a stupid idea to you. God knows what he's doing, and I think it's important that we trust, even when we're confused. I said verse 21, right? All right, boom. Matthew 16, verse 21. From then on, Jesus began to tell his disciples plainly that it was necessary for him to go to Jerusalem and that he would suffer many terrible things at the hands of the elders, the leading priests, and the teachers of religious law. He would be killed, but on the third day, he would be raised from the dead. So, we all know how the story ends. Obviously, in our context, we are 2,000 years after this. But imagine Peter in this moment. He don't got no clue what's going on. It's been maybe 3 years. I don't even know how long it's been in this part of Matthew. It's been some time though where you know this guy, and he's talking about he's about to be handed over to religious leaders. He's about to be killed, but he's gonna rise from the dead. What are you talking about, right? The same exact teacher who talks constantly in parables. So maybe you're like, this is probably another one of his parables. He's probably just messing around, with Jesus, classic Jesus kind of thing. But Jesus isn't messing around or saying something in code here. He's talking plainly that he's going to die. And let's see how Peter responds. But Peter took him aside and began to reprimand him for saying such things. Heaven forbid, Lord, he said. This will never happen to you. Jesus turned to Peter and said, Get away from me, Satan. You are a dangerous trap to me. You are seeing things merely from a human point of view, not from God's. That's a really good verse right there. And I want to focus on what Christ says in that verse, because Peter obviously sees death as a negative thing. Nobody wants to die. Nobody wants to be killed. And that's perfectly okay in a human context, you know what I mean? But he's not seeing things from God's point of view, which is then causing him that confusion. Well, not even that confusion. It's causing him to be led by his confusion. I think it's okay to be confused and it's okay to have certain feelings, but to be led by those feelings, that's when, sin creeps in. That's when start to believe lies. That's when you start to veer off the path that God has for you, you know what I mean? And that's exactly what Peter does here, you know what I mean? He's confused by what Jesus says, and he allows his confusion to create words that come out of his mouth, you know what I mean? He says, Heaven forbid, this will never happen to you. Peter himself doesn't even know what he's saying out of his confusion. If that never happened to Christ, this video would not exist. This Bible would not exist. We would all be going to hell, bro. You know what I mean? We would have no reason to live. We would have no salvation if that never happened to Jesus. So, in our confusion, if you're going down a certain path in life that God is taking you down, you know what I mean? You know God is leading you this way. But it feels like, dang, this is terrible. This is a dark valley. If you never go through that stuff, God can't work a miracle through your life. God can't bring his plan to fruition if we don't trust him. If we don't follow him and agree with what he says, even when it sounds like the most terrible thing. Next, we're going to go to the next chapter, Matthew 17, verse 7. This is when Jesus transfigured on the mountain. And it was Peter, James, and John, and they saw Elijah and Moses. Then Jesus turned into like a bright white light. I'm not going to read the entire section, but basically, here's what happens after that happened. Then Jesus came over and touched them. Get up, don't be afraid. When they looked up, Moses and Elijah were gone, and they saw only Jesus. And as they went back down the mountain, Jesus commanded them, Don't tell anyone what you have seen till the Son of Man has been raised from the dead. Can you imagine being on that mountain? Y'all just walking up a mountain, you reach the top. Jesus walks away a little bit further. Next thing you know, he's a bright white light, and Moses and Elijah are right there. If you go and look me in the eyes and tell me that wouldn't have you at least a little bit confused, you're a liar, okay? There was a purpose that God took Peter, James, and John through that experience for, and they might not have understood it in the moment, but I bet you that after the crucifixion, after all that stuff went down, in the aftermath of the situation where they can see, the full picture of the story, they started to understand it a little bit better. I might not understand why God called me to make these videos, but maybe in 10 whatever years in the aftermath, I can, in hindsight, look back and see the full picture of the story. Another example, Abraham, when God told him to kill his only son, he was probably a little bit confused. But in the aftermath, when the angel said to stop, and now you've proven that you have faith in God, he can look back and see, oh, this is what God was trying to do. If you take nothing else away from this video, just take away the fact that it's okay to be confused. Just don't let your confusion lead you. Don't let your confusion call the shots. Don't let your confusion tell you what's right and what's wrong, right? Confusion will only lead you to a place that you know, a place that you're comfortable with. It'll lead you not just back to your sin, but it won't lead you deeper in a trust with God. Because to trust God, you have to have faith. And having faith is believing without evidence, right? Hebrews 11:1. Let me check. Hold on. I think I know my word. I do know my word. Hebrews 11:1. Faith shows the reality of what we hope for. It is the evidence of things we cannot see, right? Having faith is believing without seeing. And if you can't see, you have to trust. According to YouTube, only about 30% of viewers stay until the midway point in the video. If you're a part of that special 30%, leave a comment down below saying midway, letting me know. Now back to the video. And lately in my life, it's been, I don't want to say a lot of confusion with God, just a lot of questions, I guess. And God don't always answer my questions for some reason. I'm not always sure why, but like God's definitely leading me down a certain and specific path. And if I'm being real, there was a moment, a few months, maybe from like October to like last week, from like October to last week, where I clearly knew where God was leading me down. And I was like, nah, I'm cool, Big Birdie. I'm gonna do something else instead. I had a plan B. My plan B did not work. I thought that I could just, say no to God. He'd be cool with it and find someone else to do it. Apparently not. You know what I mean? And I'm not sure why. I thought he would, respect my no. He did not respect my no. And maybe I'm not even confused. I'm just a little bit scared of the calling, which is cool too. Or maybe I'm confused as to why he picked me. That sounds more accurate. I'm confused as to why the Lord picked me. But sometimes the Lord picks people who wouldn't pick themselves. You know what I'm saying? He picked David. David was the youngest brother of the smallest tribe, and the youngest brother in the smallest family, the smallest tribe in all of Israel. God's not always going to pick people who are qualified, and that is okay. So let's move on to our next passage. The next passage comes in Mark 14, verse 3. It is when Mary had the alabaster box and, broke it on Jesus, anointed him. Meanwhile, Jesus was in Bethany at the home of Simon, a man who had previously had leprosy. While he was eating, a woman came in with a beautiful alabaster box of expensive perfume made from the essence of nard. She broke open the jar and poured the perfume over his head. Some of those at the table were indignant. Why waste such expensive perfume, they asked. It could have been sold for a year's wage, and the money given to the poor. So they scolded her harshly. But Jesus replied, "Leave her alone. Why criticize her for doing a good thing to me? You will always have the poor among you, and you can help them whenever you want to. But you will not always have me. She has done what she could, and has anointed my body for burial ahead of time. I tell you the truth, wherever the good news is preached throughout the world, this woman's deed will be remembered and discussed." I think the Gospel of John gives us more insight into the person who was, indignant with the lady, which was Judas, the one who later betrayed him. The reason that Judas was so indignant is because he didn't understand what Mary was doing, right? He was confused. And it's okay to be confused, but in his confusion, he spoke out against this lady for worshiping Jesus correctly. He spoke out against this lady for doing what was right because his heart wasn't fully submitted to God. And since he had this previous notion of who Jesus should be, what Jesus should be doing, how Jesus should be worshiped, what should be done with money, when what God did didn't fit his previous notion or box that he already had God in, that friction created confusion. And that confusion, when he submitted to it, became words out of his mouth to speak against what was happening, right? The same thing with Peter. I'm not saying one person's better than the other. It happens to us all. But it's important that when it happens and when that friction is felt, at least in times of when God does something that you don't really expect, I just hope that we can all question ourselves before we question God. Question where we're unaligned with God before we say, oh God, X, Y, and Z should not have happened. You were wrong for doing that. There is this theory, I guess I'll say. I'm not 100% sure what to call it. So I'll call it a theory. There's this theory that the reason that Judas betrayed Jesus was to force Jesus' hand. to put him in a position of, about to be taken by the Jewish elites, about to be taken by the Romans, about to be taken to be crucified, to be tried, and to force him to act in a way that more aligned with Judas's plan, with Judas's heart, with what Judas thought Jesus should be. How many times have you acted like that? How many times have I acted like that? I know for a fact I just acted like that last week, like I was saying. We might be so confused that we let the confusion kind of take a hold of us and determine how we're going to move with God, how we're going to worship God, how I'm going to serve God, how I'm going to give my life to God, how much of my life I'm going to give to God. We cannot continue to let our confusion speak for us. It's okay to have confusion, like I've been saying, but it's not okay to let that confusion drive you and make decisions and to take you off the path that God has for you, no matter how crazy the path God has looks. Because God's not trying to lead you astray or get you killed or trick you or have something bad happen to you. God wants to be glorified on this earth through your life. And there's certain ways he's going to do that. You just got to trust it. I think another important lesson to draw from the entire story of Judas is that we cannot put God in a box. We cannot put limits on who God is, what God does, who Jesus is, and what he does. We have to let Jesus tell us who he is. We can't do the opposite. We can't choose what honors God and what doesn't. We can't choose what part of our lives we're going to lay down and what parts we're not going to lay down. Just because you don't understand does not mean that it's a bad thing or that you shouldn't follow or that it's not in alignment with God. And a quick question: what in your life do you see right now that seems confusing that you can flip your perspective on and instead see it as an invitation to trust God more? Let me know in the comments. This whole lesson and conversation about confusion, I think the first time that I really saw this in the Bible was the walls of Jericho, Joshua 6. Basically, God told the Israelites to walk around this city called Jericho 6 or 7 times, no pun intended. To walk around the walls of Jericho 7 times, silently. Then the walls would fall after they yelled after the last time, right? My point in bringing up this story, that had never been done before. There was no precedent. There was no word for them to read that this is what God does when you walk around the walls and yell, they fall. No, God just gave them some seemingly random instruction to walk around this wall silently. And on the 7th time after you finish, yell, the walls are going to fall. That must have felt crazy to go through. It must have felt really dumb to do in the moment. But it was a part of God's plan. Are you seeing where I'm going? Just because God gave you a word or a direction or a plan that might seem really stupid right now, excuse my, that might seem like it lacks wisdom or like it makes no sense. And because it hasn't been done before, I've never seen it been done before, does not mean that it's not God. It doesn't mean that it is something you shouldn't trust. Doesn't mean that it's something you should call into question or call like God's wisdom into question. You know what I mean? A part of submitting, a part of trusting, and a part of growing in your faith is doing things that do not make sense, right? Back to Hebrews 11:1. Faith is believing without seeing, to paraphrase it. They had to believe that God telling them to walk around this wall 7 times would actually work. God could have easily just made the walls come crashing down. He's God. But he wants us to be active participants in the building of our faith. He wants us to be active participants in his work on this earth. You know what I mean? And part of us being active participants is just moving while you're confused. It's cool to be confused. I bet there was like 400,000 of them. Somebody had to be confused while walking around the walls of Jericho. But they still walked. So please, just walk. Today's video was sponsored by, well, nobody yet, but being blessed by today's video, make sure to leave a comment and let me know. And please subscribe. It supports this channel. Now back to the video. There's this song called, I don't know, or I guess IDK by Jarius Mullen. Love that song, by the way. That was like in my top 5, I think like 2 years ago. Might be in my top 5 this year too. I'm not sure. It's a very good song. I listen to it very often because the lyrics are just so convicting for me. Great singer as well, but the lyrics are just top tier. But a lyric that I want to quote from this song is, if it was all mapped out, I'd forget to look up. So just as we close Whether God's withholding information from us, it's for a reason. If God's withholding the plan from us, it's for a reason. If God is allowing it to look like we're about to lose, it's for a reason. When God takes us through, not around those dark valleys, it's for a reason. And the reason, at least partially, is so that we can grow in trust with Him and to grow in a relationship with Him because He loves us. So, again, I urge you to just trust God with whatever doesn't make sense right now. Whatever situation you're going through that seems like it's over or like it has, I guess, no hope or just doesn't make sense in whatever capacity, I just urge you to continue to trust God right now with it. Just trust Him today. Don't worry about months and years from now. Just trust Him today. And I urge you to not be like Judas and try to force God into your plans. I want you to allow Christ to shape you into His plans, not the other way around. So I'm telling you, it's not going to work, big bro. Let yourself be confused. But don't let your confusion stop you from following God. That's all. YouTube seems to think that this video right here is the perfect one for you to watch next. Let me know if they got it right. With that being said, y'all, take care of yourselves. Please continue to trust God. I'm going to catch y'all when I catch y'all.